Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
What a vivid memory I have of that. I was 11 years old. No, not quite 11. And I was playing outside, and my dad came running out of the house. He said, "Conrad, where's Pearl Harbor?" I said, "How do I know where Pearl Harbor was here? I was only a 10-year-old youngster." And I said, "My God, I don't know where Pearl Harbor was." So we ran in, and of course then I think it was Edward R. Murrow, or who, yeah, I think it was Edward R. Murrow, was broadcasting and talking in Honolulu. Well, we think it was the Chicago Bears were going to play. And I can only remember the fact that newscasts were coming in. And that day, on that Monday, I went back at noon hour to listen to President Roosevelt address Congress for the declaration of war against Japan and Germany at that time. And what a vivid, it had such an impact on.
No matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory. With confidence in our armed forces, with the unbounding determination of our people, we will gain the inevitable triumph, so help us God.
I was a Boy Scout, and we had paper drives and collecting aluminum cans, whatever we could for the war effort at that time. I have a vivid memory, especially of a neighbor of mine who was missing in action. His name was Joe Pensek. I can still remember this day. I was playing outside, and a messenger came on a bicycle with a telegram to his mother, and all I heard was her screaming. My mother didn't know what was going on. She was screaming beyond that her son was missing in action during the Battle of the Bulge. He was in that 1st Airborne Division, and his family, I could still see the tears and the grief in that family. It was just, I will never forget that. Freed after the Second World War, but he was injured in the Battle of the Bulge and captured.
What relief for the parents to finally know that he was alive.
That their son was safe, yeah, after. But the father died not knowing it, though.
Oh, gosh.
He died prior to the son coming from the service after the end of World War II. When I completed college, I was drafted. I completed college in May of 1952. And I was drafted, and I entered the military on Memorial Day of May 1952.
Wow.
And I was inducted at Fort Devens, Massachusetts. And after I was given an assignment to military training in infantry at Indiantown Gap Military Reservation. And for some strange reason, I was chosen as platoon sergeant or whatever. And while I was in training, I even served as cadre on the ranges. And I was given some responsibility. What I liked about that is I didn't have to pull KP then. But I served in the intelligence division right underneath the General Zwicker. Remember Senator Joe McCarthy? McCarthy tried to implement Zwicker in this communist cell. And that was the downfall of McCarthy. But Zwicker, if you have, is Z-W-I-C-K-E-R. I'll never forget that.
On one thing, the senator has been consistent. Often operating as a one-man committee, he has traveled far, interviewed many, terrorized some, accused civilian and military leaders of the past administration of a great conspiracy to turn over the country to communism, investigated and substantially demoralized the present State Department, made varying charges of espionage at Fort Monmouth, The Army says it has been unable to find anything relating to espionage there.
I hate to impose on your time, but I've just got 2 pages. This is the abuse, the real meat of the abuse. This is the official reporter's record of the hearing. After he said that he wouldn't remove that general from the Army who cleared a communist major, I said to him, then, General, you should be removed from any command. Any man who has been given the honor of being promoted to general and who says, I will protect another general who protects communists is not fit to wear that uniform, General.
I knew General Zwicker.
Yeah. What kind of guy was he?
Oh man, he was tough. He was a tough nut, is all I can say. I remember him when it was, man, when he walked, he was almost like walking at attention, is all I can remember. And, well, you better salute when you saw him. And when I was leaving my office and he was coming up the sidewalk, man, I had my arm like this to give him a salute because he responded. And he was a man of no patience. And he was a good military man, a no-nonsense individual. I served in the interrogation of people who at the time, because of prohibition, unfortunately, they signed papers when they came to the houses that they didn't realize they were signing communist papers, that they were becoming a member of the communist cell. Well, these American citizens worked at the Russian embassy as cooks, as porters, as taxi drivers.
The Soviets set up an inside operation of spies within their New York consulate to gain top-secret information. This covert group recruited agents across America.
But because they were American citizens, they had to do their tour of duty in the military. And that's where I came into the situation. I served in that military intelligence in G2 at Indiantown Gap, and what we were doing at that time is interrogating these people who were in the communist cell if they had any knowledge of Julius or Ethel Rosenberg. Well, what had happened was the agents who were doing the interrogating, and I was there, I had a .45 pistol on my right-hand side, I'll never forget that, and I more or less stood guard. Well, what happened was they were using constantly the Fifth Amendment. I refused to answer on the grounds that it might incriminate me. Well, our agents became rather exasperated with the Inquisition, so they said, Connie, stay here, see what you can do with these guys. They took off, had a cup of coffee, so while they were gone, and I didn't realize there were microphones talking, receiving our conversation, and I asked them, I said, in casual conversation, I said, how come you're a communist? And they would, and you know, at one point, one guy told me to go to HELL, and, but I said, hey, look at what you've got here in America, and I started flowering up our existence as American citizens and all the things that we have, and they told me, then they started opening up. They said, well, things were tough on my parents. We were destitute. We signed any papers that came along. And I said, well, what was it like working at the Russian embassy? Well, we got money for that. They hired us because we were labeled as communists. And I said, did you ever see Julius or Ethel Rosenberg? They said, no, but we saw Claude Fuchs, and we saw Claude Fuchs was a noted, definitely communist activity member, and he was collecting the information that David Greenglass was given to Julius Rosenberg. David Greenglass was a brother of Ethel Rosenberg. And David Greenglass worked as a machinist at Los Alamos. He worked on the triggering device of the atomic bomb. And that secrets were then given to Julius Rosenberg, who then passed it on to the Russian embassy, who gave it to Claude Fuchs. And so my responsibility at that time, when I was questioning him, and I said, well, what did Klaus Fuchs do? He said, naturally, he passed it on to the Russian people in Moscow. And he said, that was the development of the Russian atomic energy in Russia. And I said, then was Ethel Rosenberg, do you think she was responsible? He said, no, but she never declined her innocence. Well, my interview at that time lasted for maybe about 2 days.
Okay.
2 days. Well, the first day I just kind of stood guard. And I just sat there and watched the agents talking to them. And all they got from the people at that time was I refused to answer on the ground that it might incriminate me, the Fifth Amendment. Well, the next day, the agents became rather exasperated. They got fed up, and they said, we're going to take a break. Connie, sit here with them. And as I said, I had my 45 in me on my side, but then I started talking to them casually. But all the information that I got was recorded. We had microphones, and I didn't even know the microphones were up there. But they had the microphones up there, and they were recording my casual conversation with them. Well, I got them to spill more information than the agents ever got. And that's why I got this award.
So, did you just interview? Were you there for just one interview, or were there several?
That's all I had was the one interview, but I had that interview for a good almost half an hour.
Wow.
But within that half an hour, man, did they spill why they became communists, their families, and they saw Claude Fuchs and all that, but they said they never saw Julius or Ethel Rosenberg there, because Julius was passing his information on he had like a cigarette, not a cigarette, but a container with matches and that. And he was putting it in a mailbox there. And that's how he was passing that information into them.
How fascinating. So when you finally got done with that one interview, what did the agents who were listening to all of this, what did they say to you?
Well, the agents, after they got done, they thanked me. And they said, you know, we appreciate what you've done, only because they said we were never able to get any more information from them. So because of that, I was given this award